Oh, Shanti. Looks like there is some Zoom going on. So we'll wait for a few more people to join. So in the meantime, just give a quick intro of Sister Judy. Sister Judy has been Baba's angel. She has been the Baba's artist. I know Sister Judy as not only as an artist, but she's also a good dancer with the Mickey Mouse, and so I have good memories when she was visiting in Anubhuti, and definitely more about it is the topic which is connected to today's session. She literally embodies that. I had a chance to attend one of her sharings when I was visiting Vancouver. Uh, she was reading the Murli at the time, so I was observing she has so much love for the Murli, with so much bhavana. She was bringing Baba alive, bringing Baba's love alive in the gathering. and and I always see her very calm, very composed, very graceful, and especially under pressure, because there is so many projects that are always going on. She's very much a big part of Lakti Parivar, all the art and all of that wonderful artwork that we see. They are all done by Sister Judy Rich. She's a center coordinator. She's definitely taking care of a lot of service responsibility in Canada. And coming back to the topic of stillness, how can we hold that stillness inside, especially when we are living in this busy life, when we are going through so many things that is going on constantly. And it is not just the physical action, the physical motions that we are going through, but in this modern world, most of the things that we are engaging is we are engaging our heads. So we are interacting with the people, we are interacting with the tasks, we are interacting with the technology. There is so much going on constantly where our mind is constantly engaged. So it is constantly changing one after another. So, so now we have to go one step deeper and then keep that inner, go beyond mind and go into that presence of that loving stillness and allow the mind to do what it has to do. So it is a different level of stillness that is needed. Otherwise, we get so overwhelmed doing multitasking and all other stuff. And in a way, we cannot avoid anymore. And we also have it the sister uh, Gita also is here with us. So Shanti Gita Ben, if you are here, if you can say a few words, or maybe later. Without any further ado, I invite Judy Ben. Welcome, Shanti.
Om Shanti. Hopefully you can hear okay. Is the volume okay? Great. I was enjoying listening to you, Brother Harsha. That was beautiful what you were sharing. I think you captured the topic so well. I was thinking, carry on. You're doing wonderfully. I'm enjoying so much. But thank you so much for inviting me to join you. It's a real honor and delight both to be with you, but also to share on a topic very, very dear to my heart, which is definitely stillness in motion, silence in action. We might even just call it spirituality in day-to-day life is really what we're talking about. And so I thought, reflecting on with the guidance I was given for what you usually do in these sessions, there were three situations that were coming to mind in my Brahmin life that really helped to crystallize how I would want to focus my spiritual endeavor, what was meaningful for me to do with this spiritual study. We say aim and objective. So our objective has to be very personally meaningful, so that I really even when there's obstacles or difficulties or challenges, as we say, something I would die for. So our objective has to be that personally meaningful. And for me, for whatever reason, this idea of being able to maintain that inner stillness while coming into action, as you said, while multitasking, while interacting, it just seems so important to me. I don't even bother to try to understand why, but it's what will make my heart happy. That's what spirituality and day-to-day life feels like for me, and the state of dignity. So the first incident that was coming to mind was just before actually I came into the study, a few years before, I don't know, the study found me, I found the study. And up until that point, we love hearing the life of Brahma Baba because it's inspiring, but also because maybe we'll see elements of our own life in what he was going through and say, yeah, I was feeling that way too. And, he had really a perfect life. There's no reason he should walk away from it, but there was a restlessness, a seeking inside. And he had enough self-trust, self-respect to hold out for what he was looking for to come to him. I really could resonate with that feeling because all through childhood, young adulthood, I kept feeling like I wasn't quite finding what I was looking for in the available options. The traditional life just was not speaking to me. And I was getting a little concerned. I thought, what's going to become of me? What profession, what livelihood will I have? And to make matters more interesting, both of my parents were extremely liberal thinkers. So they supported us in whatever we did. There was no pressure. You have to become this or do that or go to, secondary education, whatever. No pressure. They really wanted us to honor our heart, do what makes us happy. So I found I was kind of a ship without a rudder. It was like I had everything, very, very beautiful life, but still there was a restlessness, a seeking. And then in my about mid-20s, a childhood friend, so a friend I knew from very, very young, and all through our lives, we'd on and off connect, even though we might live in different places. A childhood friend had been developing mysterious medical conditions on and off over the years that had her in and out of hospital. And no one really knew what it was. They couldn't seem to diagnose it. So she'd go into hospital, come out. She was very lighthearted, very easy, about the whole thing. But it was actually quite serious, these conditions that she was developing. And then one day, again, she started to have some unusual symptoms. And this time it was difficulty breathing. So again, she's taken to the hospital. And then I eventually get a phone call saying I should come to the hospital because it looked like she was not going to recover. And so I went to the hospital, and at that time, unless you were immediate family, you could not get into ICU. So I was standing outside these locked ICU doors, intensive care unit doors. She was in a room on the other side, and I couldn't physically get to her. And I'm thinking, what should I do? And I'm not formally in the study yet, but I think internally things were coming to a head for me. So there was a little voice that was saying, be very quiet and listen. And this other voice that was very skeptical was saying, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It sounds really ridiculous and a little new age. So I'm not sure that's going to work at all. But that other little voice kept saying, be very quiet and listen. So the little voice won because there was nothing else I could do. And to the best of my ability, I tried to be very quiet and listen for what I did not know. But I did start to feel something. And what I felt was fear. But I knew it was not my own fear because I had nothing to be afraid of. I was sensing it was that soul's fear. What had happened was they did diagnose what she had, but it was while she was leaving the body. She had acute leukemia. And at that point, as I said, her blood was almost black. There was no oxygenation going on. So the last look on her face, they told me, was one of fear. She had no idea what was going on. And so it was such a strong and strange experience. And then next, of course, was the service. And I remember being at the service, and when a young person leaves the body, she was in her late 20s, the grief is enormous of the mother. It was the father had passed away long ago. The grief in the atmosphere is enormous. It's contagious. And again, I'm not in the study yet, but again, that little voice was saying, no matter what, do not cry. And again, I'm thinking, what? But for some reason, I felt I had to obey this little voice. It's saying, no matter what, do not cry. And I remember I was sitting there and everyone's sobbing around me. And I'm like, I will not cry. And my logic said, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to cry. I felt the soul was fine, even though I didn't really formally know about rebirth. And I knew it wouldn't serve them to cry. And this said, do not cry. What you need to do is figure out what they did not have time to figure out. You have to figure out how to die. Now, I'm just thinking, these are crazy thoughts, but then I hear about Brahma Baba and his crazy thoughts, so I don't feel so bad, but it was saying, no matter what, you have to figure out how to die before you run out of time. Because if you don't figure out how to die, you will never have quality of life. And then this set in motion a series of events which are too long to mention, but it was connected to her passing. Her passing brought me into connection eventually with a BK, and that's how I came to Baba and learned I was a soul. I did not die. So that always stayed with me. In the first part of my Brahmin life, the first few years, I was constantly coming into connection around souls with terminal cancer. It was like this strong theme of, we now say, dying alive. It's so strong, this paradox. You have to learn how to die in order to have quality of life. So, didn't know what it meant at the time, but it actually, I realized, was very connected to what I was seeking, this state called liberation in life. That I had been so at odds inside. Part of me wanted to be liberated from all of these expectations and customs around life, find a different way of living. And I didn't know how, so part of me was also trying to throw myself the best I could into the options available. So really at odds. But that soul leaving the body was such a service for me and really opened me up finally to being ready to come to this spiritual study. So maybe we'll have a moment together to reflect on this idea of dying alive, which is the cornerstone of spirituality. And I know for me, I never take it for granted that I have mastered soul consciousness. I don't think I have. Every single day, I am trying to get that first lesson of dying alive. I know it's everything depends on it, even my relationship with God. So if it's all right with you, you'll humor me as I get to practice for myself. Sitting comfortably, I really love so much this idea of so-called open-eyed meditation. To learn how to connect deeply with the truth without checking out, escaping, disconnecting from the rest of the world. And so I choose to keep my eyes open, my senses functioning. And yet internally, all of my energy, all of my attention is beginning to withdraw, contract, go from so much expansion, fragmentation, coming together into a single point of experience, a single focus, where I am acutely aware of only myself. This body that I'm sitting in, I know it belongs more to the physical chair in which it sits than it does to me. This body is temporary. And if I'm honest with myself, deep down, I never really connected to the identity of this body, the gender, or the ethnicity, or the language, or the culture. I always felt there was something more to me, that somehow I was limiting myself in identifying with the body. I love this practice of returning to the point of the self. I am this wonderful, free, eternal, spiritual being operating through the body. This body is a wonder, but I am almost completely unaware of most of the functions of the body. They continue without any conscious input from me. It's an incredible machine. And I am the energy that makes it all function. I am the life in this body. And eventually, me and this body will part ways. It will no longer maintain its current form. But my form is eternal. I am always a point of life, always a soul, very, very subtle, delicate, yet powerful, living energy. I sit here behind the forehead, the observer of everything, knowing nothing of the corporeal can ever be mine. It all comes and goes, everything passing through my life as I travel through time. I don't clutch or grasp anything. A very gentle connection, letting things come and go. And my main focus now is to deeply connect with the cell. Go into that deep, silent experience. Beautiful experience of being a soul. The wonder that dying alive should be so beautiful, so liberating, so royal. Om Shanti. So as I moved into this journey of dying alive, becoming soul conscious whilst in the body, it really began to make sense of what my heart had been seeking all the time. I noticed there was a pattern in my life that really was solidified in the spiritual study, which is the second thought, really a series of experiences that all add up to one word: integration. We use the word balance, but balance is sometimes misunderstood. This idea of one thing or another, rather than the meeting of seemingly paradoxical aspects. Everything in this life, for me, was about integration. Even my Lokik parents, my physical parents, we used to joke that they were as different as black and white, because one was in a black body and the other was in a white body. And one was very artistic, very fearless, very creative. And the other one was very scholarly, a professor, very academic. So they really were it was such a blend of seeming opposites. And being raised in that kind of context, it just lent itself to always feeling that's the way life's meant to be, this integration of seeming opposite. At a very young age, we were enrolled in ballet class. So I have an older sister who's also a BK. And hopefully she won't be offended if I share this, but when she was young, she was just a little accident prone. And so it was thought that it might help to enroll her in ballet. And as the younger sibling, I do whatever the older one does. So she was a wonderful older sister. So she always invited me to join or whatever she was doing. So I also went to ballet. And ballet symbolically is called a pure form of dance. Symbolically, it taught me or prepared me so much for the spiritual study. The sanskars in ballet are actually the same sanskars you need in the spiritual practice. And the main thing about ballet is, that idea again of balance. We have that image of the dancer balancing on the top of her toe. But what's going on internally, physically, so this is a metaphor, is the dancer is focusing inwardly on the alignment of the body. So there's a lot of internal focus, incognito focus on stabilizing the core, making it as still and stable as possible. And that's why the limbs can move around so gracefully. So there's this stability, this strength, and then this outward ease and grace. So one of the examples we sometimes use is the swan swimming on the lake. Above the water, on the surface, they look so smooth, so graceful. But if you were to look under the water, they're really doing a lot. It's a lot of strength to support that kind of ease. So there's, again, a bit of a paradox. But I also was encouraged to do whatever movement I wanted. So I was also in track and field. And most don't do both. It's discouraged. The track coach does not want you doing ballet, and the ballet teacher does not want you doing track and field, but I loved it all. So I did a lot of athletics and a lot of dance. But when I've started to notice again that the two actually blended so beautifully, that integration. So when I was in ballet class, the athleticism, the strength really supported the grace. And when I was on the track and field, the mobility and flexibility really enhanced the power. And I started to notice as well that when it came to movement in general, whether it was track and field or ballet, I would go into a very, very still place inside before I would come into movement. I don't know why I would do that. It was just a draw or pull. So, for example, if I was racing, sprinting in track and field, the starting block, start of the race, we're told, trained, keep moving, keep jumping, keep stretching, keep yourself limber and warm, because you're going to really, jump out of those blocks very fast, and you want to avoid pulling a muscle, so keep things warm. So if you've ever watched a track and field competition, you'll notice the runners before they get into the block, they're always shaking and staying limber and stretching and jumping and hamstrings and the whole thing. That's what we're trained to do. But it was quite comical because if I was in a race and if you scanned down the line of racers at the starting block, they're all doing what they're supposed to do. They're shaking and stretching and jumping. And then you come to Judy, and Judy's just, and I don't know why I was pulled to be extremely still, even physically still, but internally very still. You know, the example of the tortoise really drawn inside. Part of it is it's extremely nerve-wracking to do these races, even though I love to run. So it helped to control the jitters, but it also felt like I was consolidating the energy, becoming very quiet. And then you'd hear runners take your mark, and you just became so quiet. Get set, more quiet. And then the gun would go off, go. And it was like an explosion of power out of the starting block. That was kind of a pattern I was noticing whenever I had to perform or race. I would go into this incredible stillness. And I just loved the feeling of being so calm, so quiet inside, even while a lot of motion outside. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't quite know what I was doing, but there was such a pull. So then it made a lot of sense when I came into the spiritual study, whether we use the term karma yoga yogi or liberation in life, or even the image of Vishnu. It's all about integration. And it's not just about integration, it's about the idea that spirituality had become separated from day-to-day life. Always hearing, at retreats, I'm sure you do at Anubhuti, etc., souls will come, and then towards the end they say, oh no, I have to go back to real life, as if the two are separate. It always felt to me like spirituality isn't something that you just sit around and meditate and be quiet. It's not an escape. But I was really excited to practice it, to do spirituality. So I loved the stories about how Brahma Baba would conduct drills. Even Bhakdada conducts drills. The idea that he wants the soul to exercise. He wants us to master. And it was so similar to dance. I'm used to that, to doing a practice. So it really, really appealed to me, this idea of, okay, now I, the soul, am going to exercise, because it feels so easy for there to be a massive gap between the idea and the practical. So I can say right now, I'm a soul and think I'm soul conscious. But kinesthetically, at the feeling level, nothing's changed. I'm not doing soul consciousness. There's just the thought or the idea. So to actually go into that alignment, to actually practice, to do the drill, is almost a skill that needs to be developed, even following spiritual direction. All of it made so much sense coming from a dance background. So there's a lot of sanskars in dance that I found are so, so essential in a spiritual study. One of them is the capacity to follow directions. And that requires a very high level of self-observation and self-correction. Following directions is a whole subject. And in general, we're really bad at it. So in ballet, what would happen is the teacher, who's called the ballet master, would give you the exercise, demonstrate the exercise, and then usually the classes were so large, so you divide into groups. So one of the groups would do the exercise while the others would go off and practice. We were told, go stand in front of the mirror and master the exercise until it's your turn. And what we had to do is to be able to remember the directions we're given, be able to look in the mirror, see what we're actually doing, and if there's a gap between what we're doing and what we were asked to do, and to close that gap. Sounds obvious, sounds simple, but it is extremely challenging. Even when looking in a mirror, we actually can't see physically what we're doing. So now we're talking about something even more subtle, this idea of the mirror of the Murli, the signs and signals in the Murli. Do I know if I'm actually soul conscious, not just thinking about it or enjoying the idea of it, but actually in that state? It is the seed of everything. I have to get that direction. It's the effort Baba asked me to make. And even in terms of going through the day, he always says, the main thing as you go through the day is your alignment. Just as there's physical alignment for the body, awareness is alignment for the soul. So if we're given the direction, be very sweet. You have to be very sweet. So I can go about being sweet with a completely wrong alignment. So I'm going to sort of land up in the battling, the battling result, if you will, because I'm missing a key part of the direction, which is consider yourself to be a soul. Remember me. Oh, look, now you're naturally sweet. So we don't ever focus on it directly. We first get the alignment. We see this a lot in physical fitness as well. The idea of doing something for show without the internal alignment. So for example, right now you're sitting in the chair and you've been sitting there a while, and probably there's been really no focus on your inner alignment, right? We just sit. And then we start to get sore and backache and all sorts of things. We get physical pain because there was no attention to the inner alignment. We were just sitting. But to sit with an awareness internally on the alignment is a completely different ball of wax. In a fitness class, we could ask a client to do a push-up. So they get into position and just do the push-up with absolutely no attention to setting the alignment. So one of the other principles beyond self-correction, self-observation in movement is set your foundation before you add movement. So Baba says, set your awareness before you come into action. How much do we do that? Slowing things down. Everything operates differently when I have the right alignment. My mind, intellect, and scars naturally operate differently if I'm soul conscious. So am I following the directions? Self-observation, self-correction, all of these pieces are really important. So there's so many sanskars from movement that actually really map onto the same sanskars needed in a spiritual study or a spiritual journey. The way it's even talked about is that we're moving somewhere, we're doing something. So really not to be passive. And one thing I think that's always important, which we call functional fitness in the physical realm, is functional spirituality. So I could be in seated meditation and have a wonderful experience. The moment the meditation's over, the red light's turned off, it's as if nothing happened. Again, not able to bring it into function or integrate. In my mind, seated meditation is actually quite an artificial thing to do. It's very odd. It actually shows how disconnected we are. The fact that we have to sit in a quiet room with soft music, etc., just to connect to ourselves and our true parent is a bit odd. We don't have to ever do that physically. So we're so far gone, so rusty, that we need to do that. But the end game is that we can walk and move around in that state, that we're naturally in that state. So we notice in physical fitness that, again, we do very artificial things. You know, we do plank work, we do core work, not in a way that we would do it as we're walking, move around, in a very artificial way in the gym, but the idea is always it would transfer into day-to-day life, daily acts of living. I don't want to just leave the core with those exercises. So I'm strengthening my core for daily acts of life so I can move through the world without falling, stably, with strength, with dignity in the body. Otherwise, there's pain. So to really notice, you know, when I'm in seated meditation, the quality of experience I have, do I have that same feeling or experience when I'm walking and moving around? That's something I'm always paying attention to, is that inner alignment, inner stillness still there? And I have a pretty loud and active day-to-day life. Just before joining you, I was actually in a fitness class with burpees, with jumping, with craziness, all of that. And always internally, absolutely, am I connected? Is it the same feeling as when I'm in seated meditation? I'm always asking myself that. Am I spiritual whilst coming into any activity? So let's see if we can touch that still point and bring it into activity. Again, sitting quietly, both feet on the ground, but this time checking in on the body, that posture, if you will, that way of sitting, as if I'm about to meet a very important person. And I am myself. And again, I draw my attention, my concentration to a single point of focus. That place where I am, that place from which thoughts originate, that place behind the forehead. We call the throne of the forehead. I am present here. The feeling of the body dangling down below. Feeling the lightness of the cell. The peacefulness of the cell. The very delicate, gentle power of the cell. And the deep contentment of the cell. Not just ideas or thoughts, I'm feeling it, experiencing the vibration, aligning myself with the truth, my true eternal state. I don't become a soul when I think about it. I'm always a soul. I've emerged the feeling of being a soul. Awareness of the body is distant. The experience of my true nature is very acute, very loud. I am a soul. I am Simon. I am completely non-violent. In this very subtle, quiet, aligned state, I start to focus on the most basic movement of the body, the breath. Is the breath of the body aligned with this experience of the self? Am I holding my sense of self intact as I operate through the body? Is the breath peaceful, non-violent, gentle and delicate? And looking at the posture of the body, it is said the deities neither look down nor up, but straight ahead. So connected to themselves. It even informs how they carry the body, how they wear the costume. A natural royalty from the inside out. I begin to think about various activities that happen in the course of the day. Activities that seem very ordinary. Driving the car, ironing clothes, shopping for groceries. Very ordinary activities. But how sacred those activities would become if I'm in this inner alignment while performing them. How patiently I would drive the car. How carefully, attentively, accurately ironing the clothes, and with so much detachment, so much freedom, no neediness, no desires, shopping for groceries. Even the most ordinary actions, even listening to another soul, become extraordinary, naturally sacred, effortlessly elevated. If I just am in that pure alignment, I am a soul, I am silent, very rich, deep, peaceful, silent, holding this vibration whilst coming into action. This is my practice. It's called liberation in life. And it is the key to happiness. Om Shanti. The final aspect I was going to share on, and they all add up to the same thing. Again, how to live spiritually. But it was very few and very brief experiences with the ones we call the daddies, those senior sisters, original students in Madhuban. And yes, so many of them have moved on, but their legacy, of course, continues. Their vibration is always there. And it was very interesting being in Madhuban this last time. We really spent the whole time down in Shantivam. So the campus at the base of the mountain. And one of the memorials there is to Dadi Gulzar Aviat Lok. And I would spend a lot of time there for Amit Vela because I felt that I could feel her inner stage there. So even though we may not have physically spent a lot of time with these souls, their legacy is so strong that their vibration remains there. So it can be the Tower of Peace or Prakash Stam, any of them, they have their vibration. And what I enjoyed about being in Avyat Lok, I could feel the vibration was so subtle. It was almost non-existent. That soul had been so detached and yet so loving. So remembering these experiences with the daddies, because there's a distinct difference in how those original students share versus how sharing happens now, which is what I'm doing. I started to notice that when we talk about sharing from the current generation, we tend to talk about their classes. They said this, they said that. Wow, they had this really amazing point or story they told. So we talk a lot about their classes, the words they shared. But you'll notice that when we talk about the original students, the daddies, dadas, Brahma, Mama, we don't actually talk a lot about their classes. We tend to talk a lot about their dharna, that they could give a whole class in a second through their dharma. So I'm going to just share a few examples because they really imprinted on me so much. And they're still available. You know, we had the wisdom to videotape them so much, so it's still there. But I was remembering first when I was very, very young in the study, one of the first probably years going to the spiritual headquarters, Madhuban. And at that time, you know, there was fewer of us. So this was an occasion where the daddies, it was in History Hall, and there's couches at the back of History Hall. So the daddies were sitting on the couches in the back, and we were coming in to take Toli and Drishti and gift, and there were few enough of us that they could accommodate this in History Hall. So we'd come in through the door at the back, and then we'd leave through the door at the front. And so the daddies were all sitting there, and Daddy Prakashmani, Daddy Chi was there. And, you know, very often, if we're completely honest, when we're going to take Toli and blessings from a senior, we get sometimes a little weird. You know, it's like, okay, you know, I got to get drishti, and I hope that, you know, we get very absorbed in presenting ourselves to them, etc. But this particular occasion, as I was coming to my turn in the line, I was actually having chit chat with Baba. And again, you know, I was very obsessed with dying alive. So saying, Baba, look, I just want to have an experience. I want to know, I want to see soul consciousness. I just want to have an experience of soul consciousness. So I wasn't really thinking about the daddies or the gifts or anything. I was just having this kind of almost a demanding, Baba, show me experience of soul consciousness. So then I found myself in front of Daddyji. It was my turn. And Daddyji was extremely, at playing her role, she was very entertaining, very engaging, very loving, almost comical at times, very, very engaging, very energetic and just lovely, really engaging. Everyone felt such a sense of belonging. So really, some might feel she might seem a little extroverted. So it was very interesting coming in front of her at that moment. She'd be smiling and twinkling. I had been having this chit chat with Baba, show me soul consciousness. And when I came in front of Daddy, I was sort of stopped in my tracks. Because on the surface, she was that engaging, smiling, sparkling Daddy. But when I received the drishti, all I felt was dead silence. This extremely, supremely detached state. And to the point that I was kind of like, it was shocking. And I remember, because they keep moving a lot, so I didn't have much time. And I was like, wow. And like, the integration was so profound, dead silent inside, very engaging and animated outside. We use the term detached and loving. Detachment is the secret to being loving. I experienced that stage. And I remember we had to keep walking, but I was so pulled by the whole thing that I turned my head to make sure I had seen properly. And it was so funny because I went to turn my head to look back, and Daddy G turned her head to look at me, almost to say, "Did you want to see some more?" You know, like just so, it was so engaging. And I thought, it is possible. That's what it looks like. So in a second, without saying a word, because she speaks Hindi, I speak English, without saying a word, I got a whole lesson, a whole lecture. And it was always this lectures we get, the dharna of spirituality in action. You know, and the feeling, I would love to be able to communicate, to share at that level through the stage. And this was a recurring theme that I kept seeing with the daddies. So it's quite funny because at the beginning, Brother Harsha mentioned about Mickey and Minnie Mouse. So this was another experience that was so identical. So on this occasion, it was in Madhuban. It was the year that America, Canada were the host, North America was the host team for the big global retreat. And so we were doing a sort of Disneyland theme. And so we were dressed up as Minnie Mouse, and there was a Mickey Mouse. And I think Magical Kingdom was the name of the program. And in the opening, the welcoming ceremony, you know, we're jumping and leaping. And I think at one point I was sprinting and jumping over couches. It was craziness. So I looked like a crazy person at the end of it, you know, sweating and, you know, there's a lot of makeup with Minnie Mouse. It was kind of leaking. And we had been told at the end of the program, the daddies, as always, would come up and share a little. And so we each had been appointed to go down and escort a daddy up onto the stage. And I had been told, you will go and escort Daddy Gulzar up to the stage. So I'm jumping and leaping around. You know, for them, they don't even really know, like Minnie Mouse, like, why are you dressed that way? What's going on? So I did as I was told. I went down, and I could tell that her Brahmani was a little bit nervous about me escorting Daddy, maybe because I looked so crazy. But I remember going down and again meeting Daddy Gulzar's eyes in silence, putting my hands out to indicate that I was going to escort her. And she just put her hands in mine, and the drishti took you beyond in a second. I know that sounds cliched, but it was so pure. There was no question, there was no waste, there was no judgment, so pure. Giving a lecture in a second. And same thing, same experience with Daddy Genki, with Daddy Manoar, over and over, Daddy Rathma. I mean, there's so many of, they gave a lecture in a second. They showed this stage of integration, often through their drishti, in a second. And it reminded me of an experience I had had well before coming to the study. I was in first or second year university. I came to the study in my late 20s. And it had been recommended to me. You know, I was really trying to sort some things out in my head. And so it had been recommended to me to study a book called Creative Visualizations by the author was Shakti Gawain. I'm not recommending the book or anything, but it was quite a popular book at the time, I believe. I didn't know much about it. And I'll be completely honest, my approach to reading books very often is I take the book and I just open it up wherever. I don't read it from cover to cover. I just open it up and just, sort of assess it by just reading a section arbitrarily. So that's what I did. I just opened it up. And I opened it up to a section that was called Finding Your Spiritual Guide. So I'm doing what it says in the book. It says, okay, so go inside and just let your mind lead you into an experience. And there were some random directions. And then I kind of put the book down because my inner experience was sort of taking off on its own. And I found myself kind of going inwards. And it's not that I was having any particular leading thoughts. It really is as if something started to unfold inside. And what I found is I was looking through the eyes and walking towards a figure who had their back to me, standing at the edge of a cliff looking outward. Just looking outwards at the edge of a cliff, very powerfully, like a lighthouse, I guess. And of course, dressed in white. So I'm approaching this figure. Their back is to me. It is a female. And I'm approaching. And again, it's just unfolding. It was like watching TV, really. I'm not saying I had a vision. It's just that this experiencing was happening without any real input on my part. And as I'm getting closer and closer, I'm finally very close to this figure. And they turn around. It was almost like a TV, a camera zoom that just zoomed in on their eyes. Just zoomed in on their eyes. I just really at that moment was aware of their eyes that I later learned was drishti. And I remember the eyes and that feeling of, wow, those eyes have so much compassion. So much compassion. Like this feeling was so beautiful in those eyes. And there was only one thought. It was, I want those eyes. I would love to have those eyes. And as I zoomed out, I realized the figure was actually me. Now, I did not have anywhere near that stage or those eyes. But later, coming into the study, we're all asked to really reflect on what that, we say, angelic stage is like for the self. We heard a very concrete example with Brahma Baba, that Daddy Gulzar would go into trance and came back saying, I'm confused, you're in the subtle region, and I saw you there, and but you were different. Your form was perfect. You were different. And so how often he would ask her to go and see what's the gap between my stage now and that perfect angelic stage, closing the gap. So we received so many lectures and so many classes, and even I'm sitting here kind of babbling on. But I was always touched by how the daddies just gave an experience, and the dadas through the stage, especially the drishti, and even having a sense of what my own stage or drishti can become. Because at the end of the day, and again, this integration of silence and action, honoring of the heart, at the end of the day, what I really aspire to be, just like I saw the daddies and dadas become, I aspire to be a model for God. I want to be in God's modeling agency. It is the highest paid profession to be a model for God, in the sense that having that spiritual stage, completely having that very, very elevated spiritual dharana, especially the vision, as I go through day-to-day life, so that when we look at a physical model, right, they carry themselves a certain way, and they are really advertising by wearing it the designer's creation. So it's actually about revealing the designer. So we also, the idea of revealing the Father through our stage, through our drishti, through our vibration. In day-to-day life, I find myself in all sorts of interesting places, corporate settings, etc. And especially when I'm walking through those spaces, I like to have this thought, the ultimate stage of integration. Am I a model for God as I walk through? Am I in that spiritual alignment, a Karma Yogi connected to the true state, nature, form of the self, connected to the Supreme Soul, receiving such a powerful, sweet vibration? Am I in that state as I move through these spaces? Not so much just sitting in a meditation room, but I'm actually quite intrigued by this idea of moving through the world in that alignment, a model for God. So souls are attracted to the designer, the creator. So maybe our last little experience here can be about moving into that stage. Each of us, that's really our ultimate purpose, is to restore that beautiful stage. We'll be happy, and it will be very serviceable for the task of restoring spirituality to the world. So once again, returning to that experience inside, really in a second, with a thought. I am the spiritual being operating through this temporary body, separate. I am much more than meets the physical eyes. And there's the feeling of being reunited with the sound. I was completely unaware of my own capacities as a soul. The level of dignity, royalty, authenticity I am capable of. And perhaps my favorite hobby or pastime as a soul is to come and sit in front of the Supreme Soul and just experience his drishti, his vision on me. No one else in the world can look at me the way God does. He never looks at me seeing the race or the color of the skin, or even the activities of the past. His vision cuts through all the layers and labels sees through it all right to me, the soul. He sees me as such an elevated being. He has so much confidence and faith in me. So much respect for me. It has been said that God changes the world with a look. And I am experiencing that. How much He changes my world with His drishti. And in so doing, it also changes how I look out at the world. My drishti starts to become the same as His. So pure, so eternal, so respectful, so elevated. I look out at the world from this very elevated stage. The true meaning of being a child of God. Integrating what I experience with God into my day-to-day life. The experience I can give to others through my drishti, through my attitude, through my vibration. This is the ultimate purpose of my life. Quietly changing the world as an instrument of the Creator. Om Shanti. So I'll stop there and maybe hand it back over to Brother Harsha.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this beautiful meditations and deep insights. It's very nice to know who's an athlete, who's a ballet dancer, and who's a meditator, who is also a yoga teacher. Multifaceted. I really like the process of alignment, especially to that inner presence and inner stillness. And before, if anyone have any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself.
Shanti.
Shanti.
Mr. Judy, this is Poonam.
Shanti.
I'm still at work, so just keep my video off. But one more thing, one of our another greatest qualification, she is the best graphic designer chosen by God. So amazing, amazing, very creative and instant and very knowledgeable. So thank you. Of course, Baba has chosen you. So you are the best. And thank you for the beautiful experiences and very inspiring. So I was thanking Baba for myself to attend this class and listen your experiences. So you have been very really reflected with your whole this more than almost 2 hours, 1.5 hours, is that the real spiritual being acting through the body. So being almost an embodiment. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Sister Purnam. You're very, very kind. I will try to live up to those blessings. But thank you, and it's lovely, lovely to hear you. Thank you.
Sister Valerie, you want to share? I see some comment. Can unmute yourself.
Just wanted to say, Judy, that was brilliant presentation, absolutely inspiring. Thank you, Baba.
Thank you. It's lovely to be in this gathering.
Om Shanti, Sister Judy. Wonderful to hear the story and the contemplations, reflections. So beautiful. We know you are a beautiful soul, and it was even more revealing to hear your stories, personal experiences. Very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you, Sukanya Ben. We're talking about beautiful souls. You're one of them, definitely. So very nice to see you.
Sister Deborah. Oops. Vinod Bhai, any thoughts, comments? I'm not sure if you are at work. Yeah, Raju Bhai, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sister Judy. It was very inspiring and very helpful meditation. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Yeah. See, one of the things that really touched me is the part where everything aligned to before you came to Gyan. So you are trying to describe, like, okay, one of your contacts left the body, and then you saw that fear on the face, and then you set up an intention. I'm not going to go in that unknown, but I want to figure out what it is, right? And then something before we headed into this path of Brahmin life or spirituality. So there is some intention that helped to some desire to know the truth, to know the reality, and then let that thing guide us through. And I heard somewhere that if you don't have a desire, everyone's desires will be fulfilled. Baba will fulfill everybody's desire. So it is important to have a real desire. If you have a desire for something material, Maya will fulfill you. But eventually we have to come back to who we really are. But I like the point where you nicely described, like, set your intentions right, and set your intentions as we step into the path of Gyan. We get a lot of clarity, like, oh, I'm a soul, I'm going through this journey, and then this is like, and then we have a lot of analogies. Somebody have already told, like, okay, who's that, Shakespeare said, like, oh, this is a stage, you come and we are actors, come and we heard a lot of this concept, these models and these analogies, and it helps us to put our confusion or sorrow aside to some extent. But the real desire to live from that space, and that needs little bit stronger desire or like, it is not just like I want to get over pain, I want to get over some hurdles, or I just want to have some comfortable life. Instead, I want to really experience what this is about, right? And then I like the point where you're going deeper into mukti and jivan mukti and liberation in life while alive. And then I like the practice that you are sharing, like on the track when you're about to shoot like a bullet, right? And then I still trying to comprehend that part, like how can you stay calm, because your calves will be just frozen if you're not warming up, and right. So I think the big part, even in the sports, like when you're very calm, very composed, very relaxed, the muscles are very relaxed, and then you will be supple from inside,
Mhm.
right? I think I'm just trying to comprehend. Spiritually, it makes sense, but practically, when you're on the track, when you're about to shoot, if you're not warming up, what will happen to the body, right? Because body has to be supple, and then you have to stretch and then let the blood flow, let the muscles warm up. So otherwise, you'll stretch and strain something or other, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was trying to comprehend what is actually happen when
Mhm.
you're very calm, very composed, your body is fully relaxed, every muscle is loosened up, and then when you're about to shoot from that track, so the whole muscles are fully engaged and fully aligned to every part of your body, your body structure and the muscles, and then the force coming from the soul all the way through. I'm sure, like, you might have won so many medals with that.
No, not particularly. And I guess the essence of it is that whatever we're doing, we never stop being a soul. You know, we tend to think that certain activities are more spiritual than other activities. And yes, there's certain activities when I'm soul conscious, I would not choose to engage in. Absolutely. But the idea that, okay, I'm soul conscious in this setting, but I stop being a soul over here because it's just, you know, it's physically engaged. That doesn't make any sense. I'm a soul in all these different places. While I'm doing burpees, I'm still a soul. So
Mm.
then what happens is the qualities of myself are now integrated into what I'm doing. So now, if you will, I'm doing burpees peacefully. I'm doing burpees gracefully. Most people think it's crazy, but it's really asking, you know, do I think that I'm so conscious selectively, just in
Mm.
certain
Mm.
circumstances, you know, or am I always a soul? That's really what we're exploring is living spiritually, not spiritually selective, but living spiritually. That to me is a whole part of being soul conscious. Honestly, soul conscious is that it's not just in selected places. You know, I'm at the center, so I'm going to, you know, dress white and softly, etc. And all of these support. I'm not dismissing them. They're very important in supporting our endeavor. But, you know, Baba even has said sometimes, I never asked you to wear white clothing, but you like to. You know, so what he's trying to say is, you know, you can wear colored clothing and still be soul conscious. You
Mm.
can. But I know that it's very rusty for you. So a lot of these practices help to support our endeavor. But when I go into these other places where soul consciousness is so needed, a peaceful presence is so needed, I'm going into places that where souls that will probably never come to the center. Baba has to reach them. I'm it at the moment. So whatever I'm wearing, whatever I'm doing, the priority is to be connected because this might be it for these souls to experience their lives. So it's really challenged me to explore, you know, what is my practice? Is it selective? Is it honest? And how deep is it? So I never stop being a soul in any situation. I'm always, even when I forget, I'm still a soul. So it shouldn't be limited to only certain preferred contexts, but everywhere.
Yeah, it's very, very profound. And the last part where you are highlighting more on, I think, the last meditation also, giving the whole lesson with a drishti. I like that. And I think at the end, Baba says, like Nazar Sarihal, like you give a drishti and then the soul flees off from the soul of.
That sounds so attractive to me to be able to do that. Like we saw, you know, we saw it with the original students. That's what they did. We just wanted the drishti from Baba. We just want the drishti, you know, that It's not the lectures, it's just that stage. Recently, I'll end here because I know it's very late, but recently there was a beautiful class from Jayanti Didi, and in it she begins by talking about, what are the two things that Brahma Baba loved? And one was he loved the Murli, and the other was he loved his stage.
Loved what? First
He
one?
loved his stage.
Stage and the first one?
Stage. The first one was the Murli. He
Murli.
loved the Murli and he loved his stage. And of course, they're very connected. Now you think it would be he loved Baba. And of course, that's, but our love for Baba even comes through the Murli, that's what really connected him to that being. But he loved his stage. Our stage is our most powerful asset. And it's really what God works through is our stage. So the stage is revealed a lot through the drishti. Not so, we think it's through the lectures, but Baba has even said, even good children don't have that much yoga. So that's a very powerful statement. We think they're good because they're giving great lectures and all this, so we think they're really good. And Baba's saying, yeah, but they actually don't have that much yoga. So I think our worst fear is that we'll just be a pundit, right? That will say things, but we don't actually walk them. Whereas the stage is, I walk the talk. That's what we want. I'll end there. I know it's late. Sorry.
Thank you. Kalpana Ben, you have any thoughts? I see something from the chat.
Om Shanti. I just wanted to quickly get a little input as to, I totally understand that the stage is everything, because I just come in Gyan for the last 3 years, and I'm so used to listening to lectures and talk that this was very revealing to me. And then now I'm at a point where I recognize that my mind is in turmoil. I had visitors over the last 2 days and they just left today morning, but I've been thinking of them all day long. So I recognize, but then how do I stop that and get into my inner alignment?
All I can say is you are at such a powerful crossroads in your spiritual journey to have that realization. So even Brother Harsha had pointed out that when you have a pure intention, God and Brahma will mobilize to support you in realizing that pure intention. So if you've come to a realization, a crossroads where you're saying, you know what? I've listened, I've gotten a lot of inputs, they've all been valuable, but now I've really got to start to work with them and start to live them. That's a really valuable crossroads, and it's a very pure intention. So I don't need to say anything actually as to what to do. It's going to be supported by God and Brahma as long as you, the honoring the heart, as long as you continue to honor that pure intention, to every day have that determination. I want to be the real deal. I want to be the real deal. Just to keep, honor that, keep watering that intention, and things will start to move to support. There's no doubt you'll have challenges and resistance. That's why we have to stay very, very determined. In my heart, I want to be the real deal. So it's going to happen. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place you're at right now to realize that.
So thank you for that blessing. Om Shanti.
Thank you for sharing. I'm inspired.
No, this is very revealing because we get so caught up in listening to Gyan and listening to, workshops and classes and all that, but it is the stage that ultimately matters. So you've given me a focus, and I'm going to work on that. Om
We're all
Shanti.
rooting for you. Om Shanti.
Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Judy Ben, for taking time to spend time with Baba's as a family, and we love to see you again in person here.
I have yet to see the San Francisco Center. I am embarrassed to say that.
You haven't visited, you came all the way here. So now this time when you come, you're going to stay here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, Om Shanti. I just want to add one more thing. Very inspiring for Poonam actually. And whenever you ask for any kind of assistance, request, Sister Judy, and through the email, so she would write, she would answer whatever you're looking for, but at the end she writes very, very sweetly. And when first time I received the email and I read that had touched my heart was that she writes, "Happy to help." That is so sweet. She would always write, "Happy to help." So this time, happy to come and visit San Francisco.
Thank you. I know where we're talking, but I just want to add, Brahmins are so precious. That's every single Brahmin is so precious. And it really is honoring my heart. I feel very, very privileged to make connections. It's great fortune, and everything is just, for me, an expression of how precious I feel every Brahmin is. It's nothing to do with me, or anyone could do, quite frankly, whatever Baba has me do, but the opportunity to constantly experience just the wonder of the Brahmin family, I feel very, very fortunate through these connections. So thank you.
Thank you for that lovely intention, and thank you for all the love. We will be all in this together, all the way through, all the way to home. Thank you for being yourself.
And you as well.
Thank you. Om Shanti, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the night.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, family. Om Shanti, Sister Judy. Thank you. It's so beautiful. Om Shanti.